In this video, I will provide you with some information that might help you make your job a little easier if you're planning on building a 5-sided pentagon-shaped gazebo with a roof that has a 9 and 12 pitch on it. So that's what we're looking at here. And our rafters are 16 inches on center. We're basically going to take the gazebo apart to provide you with, in my opinion, a better idea about the construction process and what might be required to build something like this, and of course make your job a little easier. And I did shape one of the posts. I will be providing you with a little more insight about that when we start putting everything back together. And as you can see here, when we remove the soil, we have 5 footings and some post base connecting hardware, and of course our shaped connector. I don't know if you need to use a 4x6 base connector and then cut it, because I don't think we're going to be dealing with that much structural weight on this particular project. But if you're going to be building something a little larger, then you might want to give it a little more thought as to whether or not you're going to need a larger post base connector. So as you can see, I shaped the outside and the inside. However, you might just choose to shape the outside or the inside, or neither, whatever's going to work better for your project. And I like to make sure that my post base connectors are off the ground a little bit, or that the bottom of the post base connector sits on top of the concrete, providing me with about a 1/4 inch distance between the top of the concrete and the bottom of the wood post. And of course our 4x4 post base connector and how it is positioned. Now don't forget, you could always make the slab a little larger if you don't like this look, or if you're looking for a stronger footing connection. And of course that can be done by simply extending the width of the pentagon at the bottom. And you can see here how the beams are supported by the 4x4. And I don't know if they have any hardware that would work. However, I think you could use some framing anchors and even some straps to connect everything together. And the straps really might not work good here on the inside or the outside. However, on the shaped post, I think you're going to be able to use a strap on the outside and possibly on the inside. You could see where you could run something up here on both sides, and of course do it on the outside here. You could run a strap right there and connect everything together. And this method right here will provide you with a little more materials for the beams to sit on. And you can almost see where it's full bearing here. The beams are sitting on the outside and the inside, unlike the 4x4 connections. Next up, let's go ahead and install our hip rafters, and you can usually just toenail these from this section and from this section and on the other sides. And if you need to, you could always use some framing hardware. And this end of the hip will need to be shaped for the fascia board. We will be using the square and not the plumb assembly method. Take a look at the bottom of the hip rafters. And again, this is a 9 and 12 roof pitch. And for those of you who might not be aware, you're not going to be using the 9 and 17 formula for something like a regular house with 90-degree corners. And I will be making another video on that in the future. When exactly that's going to happen, I don't know, but I do plan on making a few more videos. If you have any questions about building something like this, feel free to leave them in the comment area. And if it's something I think other people will be interested in, I will definitely make a video. And of course our jack rafters here, this will not be a 45-degree angle either. And our blocking. And you could put a block in here if you want to. And you can increase or decrease the length of the fascia board for a longer or shorter overhang. And if done correctly, each one of these will be the same size. This will be the same size as this one. This will be the same size as this one. And the center one here will be the same size as this one, along with this one will be the same as this one, and so on. And like I said, that's if you cut everything the same. All of your measurements are right on the money, all of your angles. And that will usually start with the building foundation being laid out accurately. Next up, let's go ahead and install our fascia board. And of course, the square cut I was referring to is right here to position the fascia board. And the jack rafters here will line up with this edge here. And I believe I'm using 2x6 in my model for the rafters and a 3x8 for the hip that was actually shaped. I think I shaved an inch off of the width to make it look a little better from the bottom. And of course, the corners or the edges of the hip will line up with the fascia board, not this. The center of the hip here will not line up with the center of this unless you have shaped the hip rafter. So you can kind of see here where once we put the plywood on, kind of go back and forth here to give you an idea of how the plywood is going to sit on top of the rafters and kind of come in here a little bit to where there will be a void here or an area that won't provide a solid surface for the sheathing to sit on top of. But you shouldn't have a problem with that. And if you're worried about that, shape the top of the hip. So let's go ahead and wrap this video up by taking a look at the bottom. Usually the bottom has to look nice. And you could always use 1x6 tongue and groove or 1x8 shiplap. Just keep in mind that 3/4 of an inch might not be thick enough to prevent your roofing staples or nails from coming through the bottom of the sheathing. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen that. And yes, that is a mistake I've even made myself. You should definitely be aware of that problem. So that's it for the video. Any questions you have, feel free to leave them in the comment area, and I will answer them as soon as possible.